Hello and welcome to Arirang News for this Wednesday morning, November 26th here in South Korea. We start with the stories making local headlines at this hour. South Korea's Nuri space rocket is positioned onto its launch pad in Gyeongsang-do County ahead of its liftoff in the wee hours of this coming Thursday. And President Lee Jae-myung returns home today, having ended his four-nation tour of the Middle East and Africa, aimed at promoting tangible partnerships. Meanwhile, at the White House, U.S. President Donald Trump claims negotiators are, quote, getting very close to a deal on ending Russian aggression against Ukraine. We start here on the local front with news of the president's return home from his latest diplomatic agenda overseas. Now, President Lee Jae-myung landed at Seoul Air Base earlier on this Wednesday morning from Turkey, where summit talks led to pledges of partnership in critical industries, including defense and nuclear energy. The president's state visit to Turkey was the final leg of his 10-day four-nation tour that included the UAE, Egypt and South Africa for this year's Group of 20 summit. We're now counting down fewer than 24 hours to the fourth launch of South Korea's domestically produced Nuri space rocket. And with the latest from the site of the planned launch, I have my colleague Park Konu standing by live. Konu, good morning. So is the weather there being a team player today, Konu?
Morning, Sunny. So as the weather can be a major variable for the launch, there have been some concerns, but conditions are generally fine at this moment, unlike yesterday where strong winds and when we saw passing rain. And the strong wind advisory was also lifted this morning as well. So the area is forecast to see rain accompanied by lightning and sudden gusts later tomorrow, but luckily that's expected to come after the scheduled launch window of around 1 a.m. So it's unlikely to affect the mission.
Right, good to know, Kanu. How are the preparations for the planned launch proceeding?
Right, so at the moment, most procedures remain on track, and the only change is that plans to connect the rocket to the umbilical system, which supplies fuel and oxidizer ahead of launch, were pushed back from last night to this morning due to the weather. As a result, additional checkups to ensure there are no blockages or leaks in the system are also expected to end this morning. But there's no need to worry, as officials say there's still sufficient time before the scheduled launch. That comes after the rocket was slowly transported to its launch pad, then erected and secured in place the day before to ensure it remains stable even under strong winds. Also today, there will be a comprehensive inspection focusing mainly on the fueling system and electrical components. The actual loading of fuel and oxidizer will begin 4 hours prior to liftoff. And as of now, the estimated launch window is between 12:54 and 1:14 a.m. on Thursday, and the exact launch time will be finalized this evening around 8 p.m. after the Launch Management Committee reviews the weather conditions, the possibility of collision with space objects, and the overall readiness of the rocket. There are also backup dates running through December 4th in case of any bad weather conditions.
Right, Connor, this latest launch, as we've been highlighting over the past few days, will be Nuri's fourth liftoff. What are some of the more notable aspects of this particular mission?
Right. So first of all, this will be the very first nighttime launch providing ideal conditions to observe natural light displays or auroras. The mission's main satellite, along with 12 additional satellites, up from the previous 7 carried in 2.5 years ago, is set to be deployed into orbit. The goal is to reach an altitude of 600 kilometers with an air range of about 6%, while the primary measure of success will be whether the main satellite reaches its designated orbit. The estimated flight time is a little over 21 minutes, and the Korea Aerospace Administration will announce the results about an hour and 20 minutes after liftoff. And as manufacturing of this fourth vehicle was led entirely by the private company Hanwha Aerospace, this can mark a major milestone in the transfer of technology and a broader shift toward a private sector-driven launch system. And that's all I have for you now. Back to you, Sunny.
All right, Connor, thank you for the latest on Thursday's launch of South Korea's Nuri space rocket. Up next, we share with you the thoughts of a pundit on the planned space mission that is poised to take place at around 1 in the morning on Thursday, as our corner just said. For this, I have Professor Paul Yun at El Camino College, who's also a NASA, that is, Solar System Ambassador, joining me virtually from the US. Professor Yun, it's a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you for your invitation. Good to see you again.
Indeed, Professor. Professor Yun, what does the success of this fourth launch of South Korea's Nuri space rocket depend on?
It means now Korea is kind of showing the world that it's a more reliable spacefaring nation. I think they are developing more reliable engines, more fuel system, better system, and the better operations, stable operation capabilities. So I think the world start to perceive Korea as more kind of reliable spacefaring nations.
Professor Yun, this particular launch follows the third one that took place back in May 2023, I believe, and it looks to be the first mission under the private company Hanwha Aerospace. All this being said, what would you say are some of the remarkable advances in the Nuri mission over the past 2.5 years?
I think the most noticeable is the weight. It's been, I think the payload become twice compared to 2.5 years ago. It's simply not just twice. It means dramatic improvement of the engines and fueling systems and the operating system and design overall. So it implies significant improvements. And I think that's what the more heavy lifting means. So I say it's a very significant improvement in last 2.5 years in launching capabilities.
Professor Yun, my colleague Konu earlier mentioned that this particular launch of the Nuri space rocket will take place in the nighttime. I wonder, are nighttime launches more challenging than those undertaken during the day?
I think rocket-wise, maybe not, but I think a human factor, it does. It's simply factor is, I know that Nuri is launching the very late night. I think the key factor will be people get very tired. So that could be a factor because, it requires a lot of attention and then you got to check so many parts. But also nighttime, one thing we're missing is visibilities. So actually the crew member could see, all the preparations going well using their eyes, but it's not available. Now they have to rely on the instrument and then extra light. Furthermore, checking because inspection, monitoring, and then particularly emergency preparation, it could be more challenging when you cannot see. So I think challenging factor is not the rocket itself, but rather human factor.
Right, I see. Professor Yun, what aspects of this particular launch are of interest to you?
I think it is very surprised that Korea has been done this one last 20 years very dramatically. It was like a testing, rocket testing countries. Now it become country that can operate space launch system by themselves. That's very, very noticeable to me.
Professor Yun, what would be the broader implications of a successful launch this time around for South Korea's space explorations going forward?
I think being able to have your own launching system it's giving more domestically manufactured satellite can be launched into space. Also, it means now Korea is capable to carry a more science mission by itself. And also, it could also open the door for a lot of private sector get into space, such as medicine or any kind of technologies. And also, Korea become more attractive international partner in space collaborations.
Professor Yun, this past summer, South Korea unveiled an ambitious plan to set up a lunar base by the year 2045. What are your thoughts regarding this particular goal?
I think Korea also signed an Artemis Accord. International effort, there's Artemis Accord. I think a lot of countries, particularly space-leading countries, are heading to the moon and eventually to Mars. And Korea has now become very active member that can involve, such as technologies, and even launching too. This means Korea has own capability to go to moon too. So Korea is now becoming one of the also active participating international community members heading to moon and then Mars. I think that's quite significant.
Staying with that, Professor Yoon, beyond South Korea's ambitions for the next frontier, if you will, and speaking within your capacity as a NASA Solar System ambassador, what more can you tell us about some of the space missions planned for next year?
Next coming years, particularly interesting is NASA going to send the human back to the moon next year. And the coming couple of years, the NASA astronaut and with the international partner, they'll land on the moon, and the coming years will build a permanent base in south pole of the moon. And I saw a lot of activity will happen in the moon, and then eventually whatever NASA developed and learned from the moon, NASA is heading to a human mission to the Mars. So I hope that Korea will have a lot of opportunity to cooperate with NASA, particularly according to Artem's Accord. NASA is welcoming a lot of good international collaboration. I believe that Korea will be very active international partner for NASA. So I hope that I see coming years, Korea become active in the human mission to Mars and the moon and beyond.
Right, of course, keeping our fingers crossed for that. One final question, Professor Yoon, before we let you go. Quite a number of pundits have spoken about the importance of coming up with reusable rockets. Keeping this in mind, what are the prospects of South Korea achieving those rockets?
I think based on my personal point of view, last 20 years, it's kind of hard. I think the international community gets surprised that Korea came this far just within 20 years. So with this pace, using a reusable rocket system, I think I don't know how long it's going to take, but 10, 20, 30 years. But I think it's quite plausible. Based on my observations, Korea's space technology advancements. That's my personal point of view.
Right, good to know. All right, Professor Yoon over in the US, thank you so much for joining us with your insights at this early hour.
Thank you so much.
US President Donald Trump is maintaining his optimism with regard to a peace plan for Ukraine in the near future, claiming that tangible advances in talks have been made. Now, his remarks stand in contrast to the more cautious tone adopted by leaders in Europe. Our Lee Seung-jae has the latest.
U.S. President Donald Trump said Tuesday that a deal on a Ukraine-Russia peace plan is very close. Speaking at the White House during the annual Turkey pardoning ceremony on Tuesday, Trump showed clear frustration that he has not yet delivered on his election promise to end the war quickly, but insisted progress is being made and said the two sides are getting very close to a deal.
I've also ended 8 wars in 9 months, and we're working on that final war. It's not easy, but I don't know. I think we're going to get there. I thought that one would have been gone quicker. We did 8. I thought that would have been an easier one, but I think we're making progress.
However, the reaction from Europe was far less hopeful. French President Emmanuel Macron said Tuesday that there is clearly no Russian willingness to agree to a ceasefire or engage seriously with the new, more Ukraine-friendly proposal. Macron delivered that message during a virtual meeting of the Coalition of the Willing group of Ukraine's European allies, co-chaired by UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and Macron. He added that the coalition would maintain continued pressure on Moscow and reaffirmed that Europe will continue to support Ukraine with strength. While Europe voiced doubts, Turkey positioned itself once again as a mediator. Ankara says it's ready to host Ukraine-Russia talks once more. It said that negotiations could be organized in Istanbul and that Turkey is already in contact with both sides to prepare the process. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan also attended the Coalition of the Willing meeting, where he emphasized that Turkey will continue its diplomatic efforts to facilitate direct communication between Kyiv and Moscow in pursuit of a fair and lasting peace. As international pressure increases and diplomacy accelerates, the gap between American optimism and European caution remains wide, leaving the path to any settlement uncertain. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent believes there might be up to 4 meetings between President Donald Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping next year. Addressing an American broadcaster back on Tuesday, he said that Mr. Trump may travel to China twice in 2026, with a state visit to Beijing in April and to attend the APEC leaders' meeting in Shenzhen in November. The Chinese leader is also expected to visit the U.S. twice, with a state visit to Washington, D.C., and to attend the G20 summit in Florida in December. Besant went on to assert that the four separate interactions will offer their relationship great stability, which he added is good for the world economy. Meanwhile, on the stage this November is a performance to celebrate 60 years of diplomatic relations between Korea and Japan, and a black comedy that seeks to better engage the audience. Our Ian Jin has this tale of two plays.
Yakiniku Dragon, set in the 1970s in Japan's Kansai region, presents the story of a Korean family running a grilling restaurant. It is written and directed by Jung Shin, a third-generation Korean born in Japan, bringing a piece of realist theater based on his own life and experiences of the time.
I'm fond of all the characters, but especially the father. Many of his lines come directly from things my own father used to say.
Chung drew significant attention in 2023 for adapting director Bong Joon-ho's film Parasite into a stage play. And this time he brings a spirited perspective to the discrimination experienced by immigrants.
Korea-Japan relations have changed, and Japanese people have become more interested in Korea. But issues such as the presence and identity of Koreans in Japan have remained largely unseen.
Recognized for its artistic merit in both countries, Yakiniku Dragon features actors such as Ko Soo-hee, an original cast member, and others from both Korea and Japan whose performances transcend language barriers. Also on display this November is Trap, adapted and directed by Ha Soo-min from a short story by Swiss playwright Friedrich Dürrenmatt. The play follows a protagonist who, after a car accident, ends up staying in a rural village and becomes involved in a mock trial held in a retired judge's home, leading to a series of unexpected events. It is a black comedy that exposes the uncomfortable truths beneath the laughter, and the production has welcomed actor Park Gon-young to the cast. Rather than facing the stage straight on, the theater's seats are arranged on three sides surrounding the stage, allowing audiences to observe the actors' psychological shifts up close, and having the effect of experiencing the play as jurors themselves. Trap is at the Sejong Center for the Performing Arts until November 30th. 이은진, 아리랑 뉴스.
Good morning, I'm Choo Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. In Brazil on Tuesday, the country's Supreme Court ordered former President Jair Bolsonaro to begin serving a sentence of 27 years and 3 months for plotting a coup after losing the 2022 election. Justice Alexandra de Moraes ruled that the latest judgment is final with no appeals left. Bolsonaro, age 70, will continue to be held in a federal police jail in Brasilia, where he has been detained since his home detention was terminated on Saturday after the former president was deemed a flight risk. He admitted to trying to remove his ankle monitor with a soldering iron. Bolsonaro was found guilty in September of leading a conspiracy to keep his election loss. Justice also said he was aware of plans to target a winning candidate, President Lula, and incited the 8th of January 2023 riots, which led to 1,500 arrests. He is barred from holding office until 2060. In India, flight operations were disrupted across Delhi and multiple cities after a massive volcanic ash plumes from Ethiopia swept across the Red Sea and reached northern India, according to India Meteorological Department on Tuesday. Air India canceled 11 flights, where Indigo, Akansas Air, and KLM also reported cancellations, delays, or rerouting as regulators ordered airlines to strictly avoid affected airspace. The ash came from the Haligubbi volcano, which erupted Sunday after lying dormant for several thousand years, sending an ash column thousands of feet into the atmosphere. India says the ash cloud is not expected to have a major impact on air quality. In the U.S., a powerful tornado struck an area of Harris County outside the city of Houston on Monday, damaging more than 100 homes as a cold front pushed severe storms across the south. Images from NBC News showed houses in the neighborhood of Memorial Northwest with siding ripped away and debris scattered across streets. Officials said on Monday no deaths or serious injuries have been reported. About 28,000 customers in the Houston area lost power at the peak of the storm, though most service was restored by late Monday. In New York, auction house Christie's said on Tuesday it will auction the original 1976 partnership contract that created the Apple Computer Company, valuing it in the $2 to $4 million range. The three-page document signed by Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, and Ron Wayne set Apple's original stakes at 45%, 45%, and 10% respectively, before Wayne sold his share for $800 days later. Christie's will offer the founding contract and Wayne's withdrawal agreement as a single lot at the January 23, 2026 sale.
If you bundled up well this morning, the chill in the air was much sharper. Thursday's precipitation will bring sub-zero morning temperatures on Friday. Skies have gotten brighter, but the air quality is still something to watch. Ultrafine dust has eased compared to yesterday, but Chungcheong-pukdo and Gyeongsang-do provinces will stay in the bad range all day today due to the stagnant airflow. And this afternoon, Seoul will be getting up to 10 degrees Celsius, Daegu topping out at 13 degrees. And here's a quick update on the weather for the Nuri space rocket launch in Goheung. Winds will stay mostly light, but sudden gusts remain a key variable engineers are watching. As long as winds stay under safe limits, the launch schedule should move ahead smoothly. So there is rain in the forecast tomorrow, but starting from northern regions in the morning, and that rain will bring sudden cold snap on Friday before rising back above average this weekend.
And that's all that we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thank you for watching.